Today we have with us Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla, who scripted history as he marked the return of an Indian to space after 40 years. He is also the first Indian astronaut to set foot into the International Space Station. Group Captain Shukla is one of the astronaut designates chosen for ISRO's Gaganyaan mission, tentatively scheduled for mid 2027. He is here at Ashoka University in Sonipat, Haryana, where he addressed young students. Thank you very much for speaking with PTI.
My pleasure.
The Gaganyaan mission is tentatively scheduled for mid 2027. How would you describe the mission's significance to India as a country and significance to India's space research sector?
So we all know that India has made significant strides in the field of space exploration with missions like Mangalyaan and Chandrayaan, being the first to land on south pole of the moon and being the first in their maiden attempt to reach Mars. And globally also there is a lot of respect that is there for the Indian space community, especially specifically ISRO. Transitioning to a human space mission, which is mission Gaganyaan, it is a change of magnitude, not a change of kind. It is a big shift from what we have been doing and what we are going to do. To put things in perspective, only three countries in the world have been able to achieve it: US, Russia, and China. So when we will achieve mission Gaganyaan, we will be only the fourth country to have this capability. So I think it is monumental in terms of capability that we as a country will possess when we are able to execute mission Gaganyaan. Because it involves development of a lot of new technologies which are otherwise not existing with nations who do not pursue these missions. I think that it will position us uniquely in the global scenario of space exploration, especially as you see there is a kind of race that is happening right now, going back to space and back to moon and onwards. So I think that it is a crucial juncture, it is a crucial time, and it will be a significant moment for us when we'll be able to achieve mission Gaganyaan.
Uh, please share details of ongoing preparations for the Gaganyaan mission.
Human space mission, especially the kind of mission that we are doing, the first mission that we are doing right now, they are very different from missions that are being done in established countries, let's say like US, Russia, or China. These are known as developmental missions. These are known as prototype missions, when you are sending something for the first time. And my background is a test pilot, and this is the job that we have been doing even in the Air Force. So in Air Force there are pilots who are flying the aircraft and practicing combat and getting ready to be utilized one day. The test pilots, what they do is anything new that comes in or any new aircraft that comes in, they are the ones to fly it first, to prove it, to ensure that it is got safe operational limits, and then it is released to the field for other pilots to fly. So any developmental program, test pilots have a very big role to play. So the job of a test pilot is during the developmental mission or during the prototype missions, which is exactly what Gaganyaan is right now. So it is partly development of the mission and partly training, both the things. So two things are required. One is a system and one is an ecosystem to run that system. Both are new for us because we have not done this before. So right now the activities that are happening are, one, that we are preparing for test missions, and these test missions will give us a lot of data as to whether the system that we have developed are working fine within the operating envelope that we want to see, or there are some changes needed. And to operate these systems, there is also a huge ecosystem needed on ground, a different kind of team structure, different kind of operational setup. All that is also being set up right now. So these are the activities that are happening, and we'll have more confidence once we have done a few test missions to comment on when is it exactly that we'll be able to undertake the human space mission.
The next few questions are about the Axiom 4 mission. There is a lot of curiosity among us regarding the experience of spaceflight, and so the next few questions about Axiom 4 are about that. Uh, the mission spanned 14 days, 18 days including travel. So, could you please walk us through what a typical day during those 14 days looked like for you?
Actually, the original definition of the mission was 14 days on the station, one day going up, one day coming back, so a total of 16 days. But what ended up happening was that it got extended by 4 days, so we were there for 18 days on station, one day going up, one day coming back, so total of 20 days and 3 hours. That was the time that I spent in space. And I talk to kids and I tell them living on space is exactly like going to school. You follow a timetable. You just have a timetable that is divided into segments of 5 minutes block. So each 5 minutes is accounted for. So you can chunk them together to make a bigger time slot, but it is going to be, even if you have, let's say, free time, it is going to be mentioned on your timetable that this is your free time. It is not that you can choose to do whatever at any point of time. So the day starts early in the morning, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 7:30 is the first briefing. 8 o'clock, the activities start. Mostly it is conducting science and outreach events or STEM demonstrations. These are the activities that we have, and they are distributed throughout the day. Some of it is to do with the maintenance activities on the station itself, whether it is stowage, cargo, packing, or things like that. But most of the time it is to do with science. And so from morning 8 till evening 6, generally, it is divided. You get a slot in between to have lunch, but sometimes the day can extend even beyond 6, depending on what kind of activities you have. And a lot of factors go into deciding that, because if I want to do one experiment, I need to use certain equipment on station, but at the same time, is somebody else using that equipment on the station? So it has to be deconflicted and everything has to be planned. So life on station, on a day-to-day basis, sounds pretty boring. It is not boring, because the vantage point is something totally different, but it is exactly based on a timetable. You just follow the time.
Would you be willing to share some of the findings from the microgravity experiments conducted as part of the Axiom 4 mission?
I will be willing.
Please share some of the findings.
Yes.
Please share some of the findings from the microgravity experiments.
So I took with me 7 different Indian experiments, which were curated by institutions all over the country, and we may not have enough time to discuss each and every one of them. But what I would like to comment is that all of them were curated with a basic theme in mind, that we want to execute our own human space missions in the future. So every experiment that went up was designed with this intent in mind. So let's say we were researching on stem cells for identifying whether we can prevent muscle damage, muscle atrophy that happens in space. I took cyanobacteria with me and microalgae to see whether they grow well in microgravity, because they are possible sources of nutrition for astronauts in long duration missions. I also evaluated HMI, determining the cognitive load on astronaut while they are operating screens in the environment of microgravity. So everything was tailored towards this one theme, that we wanted to draw lessons which will help us decide and devise our systems when we are setting up our own space station or sending astronauts for long duration missions from India. So that was the basic aim, but I took 7 different experiments.
Please share some details of physical and mental training that you underwent for the Axiom 4 mission and what you are undergoing for the Gaganyaan mission. How would you compare the two, and please tell us how different or similar are they?
Astronaut training world over is similar and dissimilar as well, because the four of us who were selected, we underwent our basic astronaut training in Russia at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center. So we saw how the Russians are doing it, and then I had a chance to go along with one of my colleagues to US and train there, and we saw how the Americans are doing it. And yes, they do things differently, but there is a similarity of purpose of what do you want to achieve at the end. And so we had the knowledge from both these places. So now we have set up an own training plan here in India, and it is a mix, and so it's more scientific in terms of what is the requirement. So yes, there are physical standards which have to be met, but every standard has got a rationale as to what is the requirement in the space mission. So that has been attached to it. And similarly, psychologically also, there are a lot of requirements, and the highest or the biggest requirement in terms of space flight is your ability to work in a team. That is paramount, I would say. So all these things are checked. There are huge systems in place already which filter out and which also train along when the mission is going on, to keep them up, and also to whenever you learn a new idea or something comes up, you try to disseminate that to the astronaut corps.
Please share details of the scientific experiments which are scheduled for a Gaganyaan mission. And again, how are they different from those that you conducted on the Axiom 4 mission?
I think it is too early right now to comment on that, because we are yet to do our first unmanned mission. We are in prototype phase, so initial few missions will primarily focus on proving the systems that we are sending up in space. It will be more technical missions than scientific. Science will add on later when the actual missions are going to happen.
Okay. A few personal questions. Please share some of your feelings and personal insights that you gain from training for space flights, and then about the journey of space flight itself.
That's a long answer. um,
I have all the time.
I
I
don't.
have all the
I
time, don't
don't
worry.
have a lot of time. So, a few things. One thing that I can say: the astronaut training is very varied in nature. So, from my previous background of being a fighter pilot, when I transitioned into this, I realized that when you are training to be an astronaut, you have to learn multiple disciplines. You have to learn to be a scientist. You have to learn to be a doctor. You have to learn to be a pilot. You have to learn to be basically a plumber, carpenter, everything, because there is nobody up there on the station when you go up there, so you have to do everything on your own. So this is what is required for being an astronaut. You need sufficient depth of subjects, but you also need a lot of variety of various disciplines when you are going to go up there. So this was one big lesson for me. And second, I have mentioned in part already, your ability to work in teams. The environments that astronauts work in are not easy. They are pretty challenging. And when you go up there and you have four people crammed up in very small spaces, it is essential that you have a very high level of trust among the crew members so that you perform effectively under these challenging situations. So it becomes very, very important.
Okay. So currently, since you said it's unmanned missions that are going on, so are you where are you based out of? Are you living with family or are you living away from family?
Is this a PTI question?
Yes, this is a PTI question.
So I'm based out of Bangalore with the Human Space Flight Center, where ISRO has set up in the within the city. There are distributed locations where we are, and I am staying with my family in that campus itself. Yes.
So there was a warning. I said it was personal questions.
Yeah.
So, but feel free
Yeah.
to say no.
Unless and until you ask me the address.
No, we won't ask you the
Yes.
address. That's fine. So during the Axiom 4 mission, you were up there away from all mankind. So how was it? How did you feel? Did it get a bit lonely up there?
So I didn't get the last part.
How did you feel about it? Did it get a little lonely up there?
It doesn't get lonely up there. It kind of does, and it doesn't. There were a lot of people up there on the station when we were there. Total of 11 people were there on the station. Four of us who went as a part of Axiom 4 mission. There were four crew from NASA and the crew mission that they sent, and then there were three Russian astronauts which had flown from Russia. So there were total of 11 people on station. So you don't get lonely. There are people to talk to. There are things to do. But on the other hand, you do get lonely at times. And why I say that is because you were experiencing something for the first time, which is very unique. Very few people have gotten a chance to see that or feel that kind of a perspective that you are getting to witness. And there is no good way to communicate it to your loved ones back home at Earth. You can just talk, you can just speak to them, but it doesn't even come close of doing the justice of communicating of what it is exactly. So when you look at it from that angle, it kind of feels lonely that you're not able to share that. But otherwise, there are your crewmates, team members, and everybody who's there on the station. So you really, there are people to talk to and understand what is going on.
Did you miss your family up there?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. You had the exclusive experience of being able to see both the Earth and Moon from a distance. Please describe this experience to us.
Surreal. It is very, it's a very different feeling. Moon we have been seeing from Earth. It is not very different. When you even you're going up 400 kilometers, Moon is really far, about 384,000 kilometers away from us. So 400 kilometers doesn't matter much. The shape and size is same, but the geometry of what happens, it completely changes because you see moon setting, moon rising on Earth, right? It goes below the atmosphere. But when you're up in space, you see moon going behind Earth. So it is not that you're seeing from Earth. So it's a very different, perspective that you get when you look at moon. And also there are times where moon is rising from one side or moon is setting on one side, sun is rising from the other side, and sometimes it happens simultaneously. So it is a very delicate dance of these terrestrial bodies that you get to witness. So that is a very unique thing that you can only get to see from up there. Yes.
Okay. So when the day was over, how did you relax? Could you play music, watch movies?
And no movies and no music. Actually, I discovered that I can play music on, I think, the 10th day. I told you that it was really busy when we went up there. We used to have about 13-hour work days. Like it was quite busy the initial few days. But the pastime, if you ask me, it used to be I would make myself some tea in the pouch. Obviously, it is not in a cup, and carry it back to where I used to sleep. And I had the fortune of having a window where I was sleeping in the Crew Dragon. So I would just sit by the window and sip my tea and just look outside at Earth.
Oh, that's so nice. How did you manage your emotions while you were up there all by yourself?
Uh, there are a lot of emotions. It is a monumental thing. It is a significant thing that is happening. And looking back at Earth, also there are various phases that you go through, and there are times I try to suppress them so that I can keep functioning normally, and keep doing what I'm supposed to do. Because sometimes the weight of emotions can be crushing. It can cripple you. The weight that comes with, just the sheer understanding of what is happening. It's unreal, after 41 years that we were able to send an Indian to space, and you happen to be that person who's going to space. So there are moments which definitely happen. So I think it was a mix of emotions. The good part was that I had a fantastic crew with me, so it helped a lot, and the conversations, talking to each other, because it is a very similar place that they are also in, from their own side. So it was very easy to communicate and talk to them about things and figure it out and then move on and do things. But it definitely was a very, very emotional time up there, the time that I had spent. Not all the moments, but there were moments which were really emotional.
Got it. So about the time, you said it was chunked into 5 minutes. So that was like the basic unit of measurement. So how was the time measured? Like what was the device or what was the instrument?
Clock.
The clock. The
Phones,
usual.
iPads, tabs, you are using all
Right.
digital equipment on the station now.
Okay.
But you follow GMT on station because you have to nominate what time you follow.
Got
So
it.
you follow GMT on the station.
All right. Okay. Winding down because you have to go. So, in your first press conference right after returning from Axiom 4 mission, you mentioned that witnessing and being part of the spaceflight mission gives intangible information. So, it is beyond what is documented in reports or books and will be extremely valuable for the Gaganyaan mission. So, could you please share some of this intangible information?
There is a lot. And rather than sharing, let me ask you a question. When you read about something in a book or you watch a recipe on YouTube or let's say Instagram to make a dish, right? And you understand everything. It's a simple recipe. You understand the ingredients, you see what is happening, and then you go ahead and make it. But when you make it, it doesn't come out the same way. And then when you make it, you realize, oh, something was missing, which you learn when you actually do that activity, right? Which you by hand, when you physically go through that process, there are some things which are unsaid or unseen that make themselves visible when you are actually doing those things. Just putting salt, let's say, from where are you putting salt, how much are you putting, what time are you putting at the right time, or maybe it is slightly late. All these small things you come across only when you perform that activity. So I think by being a part of a mission, this is what becomes visible. And also, America is a place, US is a place which has been doing these missions for decades. There is a lot of history. Even when you are walking in the park, you will meet someone who was part of the Apollo missions, and you would have a 10-minute conversation with them and learn something so important which you would otherwise never get in the classroom. So it is these things that I meant when I said, these are the intangibles which you really can't learn through literature or through books or through reading it somewhere. These are the things you actually learn when you are part of such missions. So.
Okay. Axiom 4 mission was an international commercial collaboration. Gaganyaan is India's indigenous flagship program. How would you compare the two programs in terms of outcomes or expectations or any other thing that you can think of?
It is correct. You brought out correctly that the designation itself is different. It is a commercial international program. It wasn't meant to be commercial. We wanted to do a mission with NASA, but there is no framework that allows you to do a mission with NASA right now, because they have enabled this private sector to do such missions. They have been doing it for so many years that they've decided to give it to the private sector to enable missions in the low Earth orbit, and they are moving on to moon and beyond. We are at a point wherein we are starting these missions. We are going to send our astronauts for the first time. And for a country, 1969 was the year when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, 20th July. And 1969 was the year when ISRO was formed. So if you look at the delta from where we started and from where they were, I think it is very significant for us that we've reached a milestone wherein we are capable enough to pursue these missions. So I think in terms of outcomes, um, it is quite different, and especially when India pursues this and we are able to do it successfully, it will give a lot of courage to other nations who are looking at doing something like this, because it feels possible. You're not able to relegate it to, okay, this is for somebody else. When you see somebody doing it, well, like yourself, you feel like, no, this is, we can also do it. So I think it is going to be very inspirational for a lot of other countries as well, and for us all Indians it is going to be very significant. It will be a very proud moment, because it is difficult, it is complex, it is challenging, but I do think that we have it in us to make it happen, and when that happens, I think it is going to be very significant.
When do you think India can have its own habitable space station, just like International Space Station or China's space
So
station?
again, series of steps. First steps, you have to take the first steps. We have to make Gaganyaan happen, and then eventually move on to there. So I don't think that putting a timeline right now is going to be the wisest thing to do.
Okay.
Yes.
And the US government about 2 weeks back released some classified files on unidentified flying objects dating back decades, including files from the SBI, FBI, and NASA. I'm sorry. Since you've traveled to space, would you have any thoughts on the topic of alien or extraterrestrial life, whether it might exist or not?
The only thought that I can tell you is I didn't see any in space, and probably there are more aliens on Earth than in outer space. That is what I would say. Um, I will not reject it by saying that since I have not seen, it doesn't exist, because I don't think that is evidence enough for me to comment on that. But in my personal experience, I did not encounter any such thing while I was up in space.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you very much for speaking to PTI, and we wish you a pleasant stay ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.